Hey guys, welcome back to the Goodfellow Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Barone. Today we're going to talk about the Mafia in Hollywood and the way they portray the Italian culture. So I'm going to tell a little bit about how it is and how what movies they got it right and which ones they got it wrong. But before that, don't forget to like and subscribe so I can bring some more stories to you as well. Tune into the Patreon channel where we have some extra content as well. And don't forget to look at our shop where we got nice shirts with the Goodfellows logos and hats and thermoses and all that good stuff. So with that, I want to get right into it. I hope you guys had a good Easter though. Anyways, I did. I ate like a slob. But anyways, let's get right into the whole thing. The first example I want to use is House of Gucci. Now I wrote a couple of things down here. They kind of portray Italian people like we're almost like low lives in a way. In Italian we say like gavones, or you know what I mean, and got low life in another slang is like gaffoni, you know. But look, do guys cheat on their wives in Italy? Yeah, of course they do. So and wives do it too. They cheat too. Everybody does it, but not everybody does it. Like in other words, some people do it and some people don't. But they make it look like Italian people. This is all they do, and it was kind of making us look like low lives. And to be honest with you, this House of Gucci, as an example, is going to be the first on my uh, poll as the worst one, because you know, let me see one of my notes I left here. Yeah, they talk about Italian women being loud and obnoxious, and that's not true. I mean, are there some women who are loud? Sure, but they're not obnoxious. You know what I mean? And the whole thing is like this. Let me give you a secret. If you make an Italian woman angry or mad or something, you got a problem. But I think that's in any culture. The whole thing is most Italian women, they got class, they walk around, they try to do the right thing, you know. And then you get like some of them who they think who they are. I mean, look, you get all kinds of women, no matter what culture it is. But I just didn't like the way that they portrayed it. Now they had a lot of good stars in this House of Gucci, which I was a little surprised at. They had Lady Gaga in there. They had Al Pacino in there. And Lady Gaga, for the most part, I think she's a great actress. Oh, I said actress. Well, that's because of my age. Actor. But the bottom line is obviously she's a great singer and composer and all this stuff like that. But I was a little surprised that she would be part of something like this because she is of Italian heritage, and she seems to make a good point to that, especially when she was with Bradley Cooper making that movie, how they got along because he's half Italian and stuff like that. They had excellent chemistry together. But I was just a little surprised at her. And then, of course, Al Pacino, I don't know, maybe he's just old enough. He just figures, let me do another movie. I really don't know. But anyway, that's my worst as far as an example of what I talk about, the bad, how they portray it in Hollywood. And do you have any questions on that one before I go to the next one?
Yeah, I also saw that movie. Wasn't there a lot of they portrayed Italian culture as like very gaudy
Yeah,
and
stereotyped it.
yeah,
Yeah,
over the top acting, like portrayed Italians, all Italians is like
that's right.
loud and obnoxious kind of, and just a lot of harmful stereotypes that aren't necessarily, they could be true. Like that's what a stereotype is. It could be true, but it's not to say that that's how every person in that group is.
Well, I don't like blanket statements. You know what I mean? Like you can't just say everybody's like that. That's like me saying all Irish people drink. They're all drunks. That's not true. You know what I mean? You got some people, just because of their nationality, right away they stereotype them. You know what I mean? Listen, Italian people for the most part they ruled the world for 1,000 years. You know what I'm saying? So most people still follow the what the Italian people set forth. You know what I mean? They were great builders. They were good people. I mean, but and some of them were mean, just like anything else. Just like how listen, it's like anything else. Every culture got somebody in it, but I just thought that this particular movie, was just I don't know. It just really put a bad taste in my mouth. You know what I mean? So, anyways, I'll move on. And this movie right here, this was Gotti. Okay, this was in 2018. I saw it, I think, once. I didn't watch it no more.
The one with John Travolta,
John
correct?
Travolta, yeah. So I like John Travolta. Of course, I grew up with him, like on watching him with the Welcome Back Carter, since like when he got his start and all of this kind of stuff. But this now, don't get me wrong, he's a good actor. I'm not going to take away anything like that. And did he have a mean look? Of course, he looks good with hair on his head. Most people do. But even on to be honest with you, it's not that I'm trying to follow. If somebody gives this movie a bad rating, I don't really care. If I like it, then I like it. This is my opinion. But even Top Tomato there,
Rotten Tomatoes.
Rotten Tomatoes, yeah, that's it. What I call it, Top Tomato, yeah, yeah. So, so Rotten Tomatoes even gave it a bad score. So that's pretty bad. A 0. I mean,
0%, right?
0%. That's pretty bad. But don't forget too, if you remember, I think this was based on John Gotti's son, who actually kind of did the whole thing with John Gott, with about his father and
The memoir.
yeah, like his memoirs and stuff. And don't get me wrong, he had a lot of love for his father, and I get it. I could understand that. You know what I mean? I guess there's probably still a lot of things he wish he said to his father, maybe, and now he can't. But to glamorize it, like in his, because you could tell it's from his eyes, they missed a lot of opportunities to show how brutal the mafia really is. And the acting was not as good as it could have been. Now, I've seen John Travolta in the movie Get Shorty. I mean, he was like a perfect. I was like, wow, he played it perfect. He looked terrific. He dressed sharp. He actually did a great job in that movie Get Shorty. But this one here was just, I don't know. I couldn't follow the dialogue that great. It was like how sometimes I'll talk on the show. I'll go from one thing to another. And I make a little, because I try to keep on the same path, but I don't. So to me, that's another one I just thought was a complete flop. And, no offense to the Gotti family or anything, but I think it could have been done a lot better, more real, if you ask me. You know what I mean?
Right.
And you had any questions about that? Anything you want to say to add to that or no?
Yeah. So, what did you think? You said that the acting was a little bit not the best. Was it just John Travolta, or was it the whole thing?
It was everybody in there. Everybody that was trying to portray, somebody who they played their part. Look, like even I'll just talk about John more or less. John Travolta. Do you know how hard it is to play like a guy like John Gotti? How he really was. The guy was an icon. Let's face it. Okay, the man lived as a gangster and died as a gangster. He was a tough guy his whole life. Louis Kassman's been on our show a few times, and he tells a story even better than me. He came from nothing, okay? And so to him, the mafia was everything. And so this is how he was. That to me would have been a better story about how he really, more true to his life. You know what I mean? I think that would have did him honor. Because listen, in my opinion, and for what Lewis says, John Gotti didn't apologize for anything. He lived his life the way he wanted to, and he died the way he knew he was probably going to die. So to me, I think the movie did the father or John Gotti, however you want to say it, an injustice.
Right.
And that's another reason why we have Louis Kassman on here, because he's been around him a lot and more. Even Michael Francis talks about him when he had to sit down. He had to talk to him about something. You know who you're dealing with then. And he had a certain way about him. He'd walk into a room and everybody went, oh, geez, you know what I mean?
And this movie more portrayed him as kind of like a softie, and also not only him, but just mafia culture in general. It didn't really show the
that's right
brutality as some other movies, more accurately portray.
You want to know something? I'm glad you brought that up, because my third one that I really liked and I thought it was more true to the life was Goodfellows. Matter of fact, when I was cooperating with the government and I turned an informant, I emailed Henry Hill and we talked a little bit going back and forth. You know what I mean? And I just happened to like this movie. Of course, you had great actors in there too, but it was more real. You know what I mean? It felt like it was down to earth. It showed him coming up as a kid, the fact that he was half Italian, half Irish. He could never get strained out. Joe Pesci played a good part. There was more killings the way it was. Look, back in the day, you did one little thing wrong in the mafia, you could have been killed for anything back then. They pretty much they were more strict, if you know what I'm trying to say. Like with the Gotti movie, there was drugs in there and all stuff like that. Yeah, they did it, but in the same thing with the Goodfellas too. They did the Latanza heist and all of that crazy stuff back there. So that was more all real. And to me, that was like when they even had Robert De Niro with all the guns and he was wild and crazy. They choking people, they're stabbing people, they're shooting people. That's the real life. And to me, that's important to really make a. If you're gonna make a movie about it, make it more realistic. You know what I mean? There was a couple of movies they show some stupid things. I'm like, now you know the guy's coming after you. Why did you just open the door to anybody or whatever? You know, stupid things like that. You know. But I thought Goodfellas, especially since there was a scene where Henry Hill, the girl, his girlfriend at that time, it's the guy across the street that she knows for a long time. He tried to attack her and feel her up or whatever he was doing. That actually took place in my town, Never Shell. The house is right now. I know where the house is and everything where they did the movie.
Really?
Yeah, and when he picked her up and she called him from the phone booth, that was Friendly's right in on Quaker Ridge Road in North Avenue.
Wow.
Yeah, right in there. So
Henry Hill lived in New Rochelle?
no, they just filmed the movie there. Some parts of it.
Okay, the movie, that scene was filmed in. I thought you meant that was based on a true event and it occurred in New Rochelle.
Yes. But and I was right near my house. That's where I lived, right in the back over there. So, anyways, and then him pistol whipping the guy like that. See, that to me is real life. Because the guy made a mistake and get his girlfriend. They knew he was coming. They wanted to see what he was going to do. And the guy goes, hey, what do you want? You want something? Bing, bop. He started pistol whipping the guy. And his friends were so scared. They saw him do it. They got scared. And that to me is more real life, Right. Especially since they weren't tough guys anyways. I mean, if we saw some guy grab a pistol and pistol whip the guy, they would have had to pull me and my friends off him because we would have jumped on him. We don't care. But those guys weren't never going to do that. They just watched his friend go, ooh, please stop. You got enough. You know what I mean? That's real life to me. And him handing the girl that was supposed to be Karen the gun and she hit it, to me, it was real. And that makes this movie blow these other two away. They can't even touch Italian people. But look, it's the mafia. It's what it is. In that life, you know what betrayal is. You know you're going to be dealing with people who are killers and this kind of stuff. But there are certain levels of betrayal that they shouldn't even do. You get surprised that you get shocked at because you're like, really, bro? I knew you were messed up in the head, and I knew you would, I wouldn't really be able to trust you that much, but, they can do it so much like on a bad level. Even you're shocked even when a wise guy does that to you. You know what I mean?
Right.
Almost like the same thing about my father and everything like that. My father was loyal to you, just like I said, Gotti. He lived and died for that life. My father did the same thing too, and then you want to get rid of him? Are you kidding me? Nah. But listen, all kidding aside, the best movie, and I think that still is the number one that really portrays the mafia the way it is, was The Godfather. Let's face it. The Godfather actually showed where the mafia originated from, Sicily, how brutal it was, how people hadn't escaped Italy and come here, and they used what they knew in Italy to come here because American people didn't know, and I like the way it showed how the Godfather grew up, how he became, what he had to do to get his position, how fair he was, how ruthless he could be, how his children were different in a lot of ways than him, except Michael. Look, you had Fredo, who was a moron. Now listen, in my opinion, I think that because they knew Fredo was like that, why are you putting Fredo in Vegas and around people he shouldn't be talking to in the first place? You should have kept him close to you and not make him do anything. He's a simpleton. You understand? You don't do that. Like, what kind of people you're dealing with. It's your own brother. And look, he had to get rid of his own brother. And look, that happens in the mafia. People can kill their own fathers, their brothers, their relatives. It don't matter. Look, Michael Francis had talked about it. I think I mentioned it one time before where his guy went into the house and he said, Mike, wait out here. And he opened the door a little bit, turned down the lights, and he didn't want to go in because he killed his own father in there for the wise guys. I'm not that type of guy. That's why to me, that's not what you do. You don't ask the family member to do that. I still got. I'm killing guys. I'm doing this. I'm doing that in the street for you, and all of a sudden you want me to kill my own father now too? Come on. That's why it's ridiculous.
But that is accurate to the mafia. That's what they will expect out of you. And that's why The Godfather did
Exactly.
it so right. And it's probably pretty unanimously regarded as the best mob movie of all time, I would say.
And that's the reason why I like it. I liked how the portrayal was all these years. The guy was around his father, and then he was going to have his own son. Remember, he goes at the end when Abe Vigoda, he played, he was there, and he says, "This messes up all my plans." And then they grab him. He says, "Hey, Tom, can you get me off for old time's sake?" And he says, "I can't do it." You know what I mean? And he's like, tell him it was only business. You know what I mean?
Right.
Now, here's a guy that grew around his father all those years, and now he was going to have his own son killed just because he was getting a better deal. He betrayed his own family for another guy from another family, Barzini. So it's ruthless, but you know something? And that's another line I like in The Godfather. You remember when Michael Corleone had the senator there at his house and everything like that, and he wanted to get the gaming board to give him permission to buy the hotels and to run the hotels down there in Vegas. He says, "Hey, listen, man," he says, "I'm not going to do anything for you or your family or everything." And he says, "Listen," he says, "we're part of the same hypocrisy, Senator, but don't ever think it applies to my family." You see, because let's face it, they had asked a long time ago Lucky Luciano to go to Italy and kill Mussolini back in those days. Because all governments work with wise guys back in those days. That's how it was. Kennedys were involved with it too. They had the Kennedy's father was like one of the biggest bootleggers around. Okay, look, they knew Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra was very good friends with Sam Giancana. So all these people blended in together. Even in the movie industry. Okay, even your dog Bugsy Siegel was a movie star too. He hung around with all the movie stars in California and stuff. So everybody was kind of like in bed with each other a little bit. You knew who was who, what was what, but you had respect for certain things. You know what I mean? And that's why I said the Italian people, they had a lot of class back then. They had a lot of, and it was a lot different. More people had respect. A lot of people were more embarrassed to do things back in those days. The culture today it's all washed up. I mean, you got people that rob banks and then they grab the money and go, "Hey, look what I did," on Facebook. It's like,
The Godfather definitely got the class aspect and the respect aspect correct. For sure.
It's gonna be. That's why it was still the best movie ever made. Like I said, there was the Goodfellows and a few other movies that were pretty good, but there's nothing like The Godfather in my opinion. Let's face it. It was just good the way they killed Sonny. The way Michael took the reins. Fredo couldn't take it. That his sister was involved. I mean, it was just, they showed. Listen. When Michael Corleone had to go to Sicily after killing the cop and Salazzo, the other Sicilian guy, the Turk they called him,
right?
Because they wanted to do the poppy business, the heroin and business back in those days. Every guy that was Italian wanted to go to Italy and find a wife like he did, because it was such. There it was the old tradition. He had to ask for permission to date the girl. The whole family walked with them behind them to make sure nothing was going on, and that's why he really loved it. He said it too, and one of after his son played the guitar and everything, and he reminded him of his wife back then, and he says, "I loved her. She was beautiful. I loved her," and he loved her way more than the other wife. She was American. You know what I mean? And so all Italian guys says, "Hey, we're going to go to Italy. We're going to get a wife." That's back in those days. So I mean, it just really it really portrayed everything perfectly, and that's why The Godfather is going to go down in history as the best wise guy movie ever made. Anyways, guys, I hope you liked that little segment today. I hope you had a great Easter. I just came from the gym, had a great workout. I don't want to show off a little bit, but that's why I'm like this. I want to say thanks for my friend Charlie Buono's story, Crime to Christ, okay? I want to thank my friend Mike Marino. He's a comedian. He's got a lot of things coming up pretty soon. And don't forget Mafia Roundtable with my dear friend Dominick Cicale. And until then, peace, love, and don't forget, see you soon on the Goodfellow Podcast.